Breaking right now as we come on the air, our government is shutting down. Just within the last 30 minutes, the short-term spending bill aimed at avoiding a midnight shutdown was shot down in the Senate. A very busy night at the White House and the Capitol tonight. Good evening, everyone. I'm Wendy Ryan.
And I'm Paula Gronin for Jameson Euler. Just moments before we came on the air tonight, the Senate rejected the short-term spending bill that the House passed.
And this government shutdown will impact the way of life for millions of people across the country, including some living right here in the Bay Area. ABC Action News reporter Julie Salamone live tonight from MacDill Air Force Base with more on that. Julie?
And we spoke with military members tonight. They told me they were closely watching these budget discussions. If the government shuts down, that means they will have to show up to work here but not get paid. Chuck Ross served in the Navy. He also spent time at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa before he retired in '95.
I spent 9 years in active duty in the Navy and had a tour in Vietnam, off the coast of Vietnam, and then did 14 years in reserves, mostly here at MacDill.
If the government shuts down, military men and women on active duty will continue working and operations around the world continue unaffected, but get paid until after the shutdown ends.
And certainly that doesn't help you when you want to put food on the table and you're going from paycheck to paycheck. So that does cause a hardship on everybody.
In 2013, the shutdown lasted 18 days. Nearly 800,000 federal employees were sent home with no paychecks. Some members of Congress kept collecting their checks. Others gave them up.
And I think they're using the people as pawns, whether they're civilian or military, in this situation, which Congress shouldn't do.
Congress repaid all of the service members when the shutdown ended. Rich Herney served in the South Dakota National Guard for 30 years.
I don't think it'll impact the military at all. He's not going to send those people home. We just can't afford to be without a defense.
Julie Salamone, the Action News.
The first thing you may notice, if there is a airport, you'd probably find it as business as usual. Customs, immigration, military, the federal courts, the postal service, the banks, all in operation. And of course, all of the local services paid for by local, and that has to. So let's bring out the next. You may find big delays in dealing with such a thing like that, or if you need a new too much about that right now, because usually lawmakers find a way to time for something like Medicaid. With all those workers gone, you may just have to wait. And of course, a lot of congressional staffers could be told they have time to go to the beach. Time is really what this
to settle. We were meant to run. At Valvoline, we have a
For the first time in 17 years, much of the federal government is shut down. Congress failed to agree on children may have to shut down. All national parks are closed to new visitors, and many government websites are offline.
However, essential government services will be provided. Post offices will stay open, and mail will be delivered. Social Security checks will go out as usual, so will Medicare and Medicaid payments. We begin our coverage of the government shutdown with Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning to you, Nora and Charlie. Well, I wish that I could say that we are closer to a resolution today than we were yesterday, but I can't. Congress was here all night long. There was plenty of shouting, plenty of finger pointing, but no deal making.
Mr. Speaker, it is now midnight, and the great government of the United States is now closed.
When the clock struck 12,
It didn't work out that way.
the House and Senate were still locked in debate, even as a memo went out from the White House to all federal agencies, instructing them to execute plans for an orderly shutdown due to the absence of appropriations.
Do you stand with your country? Do you stand for your country? Or do you want to take it down this evening?
Just before 1 a.m., the House passed its fourth attempt to fund the government while weakening the president's health care law.
The resolution is adopted.
This bill would delay the onset of the individual mandate requiring all Americans to get insurance, and it calls for a negotiation over Obamacare between lawmakers from the House and Senate.
I would hope that the Senate would accept our offer to go to conference and discuss this so that we can resolve this for the American people.
They've lost their minds.
Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid said he won't agree to any talks unless House Republicans fund the government first, no strings attached.
We will not relitigate the health care debate or negotiate at the point of a gun.
The strategy is being driven by Tea Party House Republicans.
All the polls show that a majority of Americans don't want to see the government shut down over Obamacare. How can you say the American public is on your side?
Well, they don't like Obamacare. And I would say to you that the government shut down 17 times before.
The president reached out to the 4 top congressional leaders late Monday, but there were no breakthroughs.
I talked to the president earlier tonight. I'm not going to negotiate. I'm not going to negotiate. We're not going to do this. Well, I would say to the president, this is not about me. And it's not about Republicans here in Congress. It's about fairness for the American people.
Mr. Obama had a different take.
You don't get to extract a ransom for doing your job, for doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway.
Members of Congress are among the few federal workers that will continue to get paid during a shutdown. Some of them have said they will donate that pay to charity. But what is truly amazing about this situation right now, Charlie and Nora, is that the bills that they are fighting over don't fund the government for a year like they're supposed to. They fund the government for 6 to 10 weeks. So even if they find a way out of this impasse, we could be back in it before you know it.
Incredible. Nancy Cordes, thank you.
President Trump vowing to shut down the government if that's what it takes to fund and build the wall. But the White House was asked repeatedly today about the president's promise in the beginning that Mexico would pay for it. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
President Trump is in a war of words with his own party, threatening a government shutdown if Republican leaders don't come up with the money to pay for his biggest campaign promise, the wall on the Mexican border. During the campaign, the president promised over and over again that Mexico, not U.S. taxpayers, would pay for the wall.
And who's going to pay for the wall?
Back in January, the president softened on that, telling David U.S. taxpayers would pay it first.
Are you going to direct U.S. funds to pay for this wall? Will American taxpayers pay for the wall?
We're going to be starting those negotiations relatively soon, and we will be in a form reimbursed by Mexico, which I've always said.
So they'll pay us back?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
But this week, he threatened to shut down the government if Congress does.
Democrat. Democrats would like us not to do it, but believe me, we have to close down our government. We're building that wall.
Sir, the president promised over and over again during the campaign that Mexico would pay for the wall. So why is he now threatening a government shutdown if Congress won't pay for it?
The president's committed to making sure this gets done.
Why is he threatening a shutdown over paying for it? I mean, again, he said over and over again, he talked about the campaign over and over again, he said Mexico's going to pay for the wall.
Now, once again, the president's committed to making sure this happens, and we're going to push forward.
But the White House press secretary today refused to repeat the president's threat to shut down the government. All this as the president's relationship with Republican leaders is in something of a free fall. 2 weeks ago, it was Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell publicly airing his frustrations.
Our new president had, of course, not been in this line of work before, and I think had excessive expectations.
That prompted an irate phone call to McConnell from the president, with the president shouting profanities into the phone. The two men have not spoken since, and this morning the president hammered McConnell on Twitter for the Senate's failure to repeal Obamacare, tweeting, "He failed. That should never have happened."
So let's get to John Karl tonight live at the White House. And John, how likely is it that the president will follow through on this threat to shut down the government if Congress doesn't approve money for the wall? What are your sources telling you tonight?
Well, David, White House officials have tried to turn the temperature down on this today, but it is hard to see how Republicans can deliver the votes to pay for the wall, and that means either the president has to back down or there will be a shutdown, and officials say he has no intention of backing down.
John Karl at the White House tonight. John, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
To be honest, it's not just laser swords I'm talking about. In fact, one of the easiest ways to make money online.
I wish I could say I was surprised by what the president said tonight, but I'm not. This is just one opportunity where the White House hasn't tried to gloss it over, hasn't tried to say it was a mistake, hasn't tried to say we got it wrong. They're saying the base is okay with this. They'll agree. Do you?
Do I agree? No. I think it is appalling. And I think of two things now, Chris. You know, my father, I'm a first-generation American, and my dad came from what I guess Trump would call a shithole, and that was a very rural and a very, very poor area, and a very poor family from Poland. And he came to the United States alone at the age of 17. I cannot believe the courage that that took, and he was able to make a living and raise a family in the United States to become a very proud American. And second of all, what I think of, Chris, today is all over this country, you have decent people who sit down with their kids at the dinner table and they say, judge people based on their character. Don't judge people based on the color of their skin or the country that they came from, whether or not they have an accent or not. Judge them on whether they are good human beings. And we have a president today, the leader of our nation, telling the whole world that that's not what he does. I think the point that you made a moment ago is the right point. It's not just to respond in anger. It's to build a political movement in this country which says that that is not who we are. We will not tolerate that type of moral inadequacy, and we are going to create a very different type of America and get back to the values that help make us a great nation.
Senator, it's one thing to sell that message by preaching to the converted. There are certainly many people in the country who, God willing, will believe that. But what do you say to this so-called Trump base, the people that the White House is banking on agreeing with the president that we don't want those people, they don't belong here? What do you say to them?
This is what I say to them. What I say to them is during his campaign, Trump made a whole lot of promises to you. And on almost every one of the promises that he made to you, when he told you that he would not cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, well, he supported a proposal to cut $1 trillion in Medicaid. When he told you he was going to take on Wall Street, turns out that he appointed major Wall Street executives to top administrative positions. When he told you he was going to take on the drug companies, turns out he lied to you about that one as well and appointed executives from some of the largest pharmaceutical companies to run major government agencies. He told you he was going to be on the side of the working class of this country, and that was a lie. He is with his own billionaire class, and day after day is fighting for legislation which hurts the working people of this country and benefits the people on top. And I think people all over this country understand the truth of what I'm saying.
But they're being told something very different. Stock market all-time high. Companies throwing cash at their employees because they're so excited about the tax cut that will benefit all American families. Cutting regulation has brought manufacturing back. Cutting regulations has done more to grow commerce and the GNP in this country than ever thought imaginable in the last quarter of the Obama administration. They say those are their facts. How do you respond?
Well, here's how I respond. The truth is that the tax proposal signed by the president will give 83% of the benefits to the top 1% at the end of 10 years at a time of massive income and wealth inequality. And what I say is that after the horrendous stock market crash as a result of the greed, after the Wall Street crash of 2008, 2009, which devastated this country, what we saw is Obama beginning to put together an economy which grew stronger and stronger, and is something that Trump has benefited from. So our job, though, is to recognize that while the very rich are doing phenomenally well, the middle class of this country continues to struggle. Millions of people today are working longer hours for low wages, etc., etc. Our job is to pay attention to working families, not just the billionaires. And by the way, Chris, that gets us to the budget debate that is going on right now. And I hope we can discuss that.
We're going to discuss it. Let's do it right now. But here's the context for it. You may not like this, but this is the way I see it. So let's discuss it. For all the ugly words that comes out of him and the beating that he gets from the media and with due criticism, he is cleaning the Democrats and yours, by extension, he's cleaning your clock on the policy matters. He got the mandate withdrawn. He got the tax cut. You had high ground coming out of that because he did it along straight partisan lines, dividing this country by party and socioeconomics. But now you're about to give him back that high ground. You're going to do a deal on DACA. He's going to get that wall. That's my guess. And he's going to be able to say, I got the wall and I'm the great unifier. Look at all these Democrats here with my bill of love. And you will then be 0 for 2 on the two biggest moves that he's done since he's been in office.
All right, Chris, let's take one and then we'll go to two. It is only media absurdities that looks at something like the tax bill and say, oh, it is a victory for Trump. I understand that he won, but what the American people will quickly understand is that when you run up a $1.4 trillion deficit over 10 years and the vast majority of the benefits go to the top 1%, the American people understand that is not a victory for them. It may be a political victory for Trump and his billionaire friends, not for ordinary Americans.
Senator,
second of all, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We'll go one by one. We'll both do one at a time. Look, you say a 10-year window. The cycle is 10 minutes now. This is about messaging. He got out in front of this message. The media corrects the facts. I do it all day. I've lost hairline doing it, Senator. It doesn't matter. He's won the narrative of a big tax cut that's going to help everybody. Companies are giving bonuses. The Democrats did nothing to help the middle class the way you guys promised you would. I know you don't have the numbers, but the reality is you got to find ways to use leverage. You lost on that bill.
No, of course we lost the vote, Chris. But if you look at the polling done in this country, the vast majority of the American people understand there's something absurd when we increase the indebtedness that our children and grandchildren are going to have to face in order to give the overwhelming percentage of benefits to the top 1%, in fact, to the top 1/10 of 1%. A political victory for Trump and his friends, yes. The American people, though, have not been supportive of that legislation. Furthermore, take it back a few months previously. Look at the health care bill that Trump tried to get through. You tell me how many Americans think it was a great idea to try to throw 32 million of our fellow Americans off of health insurance, one of the least popular pieces of legislation ever brought up to the American people. Now, where we are today, this is where we are today.
And he got the mandate in the tax bill, which took a huge bite out of the ACA. It's going to destabilize markets. It's going to pop premiums. And he's going to be able to blame that on you guys.
Chris, you don't have to argue with me about how bad the bill is. I helped lead the fight against it. All that I'm telling you is I think you're wrong. Of course we didn't stop it. We had 48 votes. They had 52 votes. You know, that is the arithmetic. They control the House. They control the White House. We did stop the disastrous health care proposal. Where we are today, this is where we are today. In a year in which he tried to throw millions off of health insurance, give huge tax breaks to billionaires, end net neutrality, ignore the reality of climate change, in fact, make us more dependent on fossil fuels. Now where we are is in a moment when the Republicans are trying to end the parity agreement between defense and non-defense spending that has existed since 2011. Here is the story. I know it's not a sexy issue, but it is very important.
No, look, I brought you on to talk about what matters. If I wanted sexy, Bernie, I would have gone with somebody else. Maybe, maybe not. So please, make the case.
I got to tell you, one second, Chris. I take that as a personal affront.
Really? Keep going, Senator, please.
Just kidding. All right, so here is the story. The story is that for the last 4 budgets, when we raised defense spending by $1, we raised spending for the middle class and working class of this country by $1, equal for both sides.
Right.
What Senator McConnell, the Republican leader, now wants to do is to move toward an incredibly large increase in military spending. Not quite clear. Could be between $100 and $150 billion over the next 2 years. Largest increase in modern American history.
Right.
But what he also wants to do is say, we are not going to pay attention and have parity for the needs of working families. They have not even reauthorized the children's health insurance program.
So what can you do about it? They haven't reauthorized CHIP. They're going to do away with parity. What are you going to do about it?
We're going to fight like hell. This time, you see, it is not a vote of 52 to 48.
Right.
This time, they need 60 votes.
That's right.
And I am going to do everything that I can to make sure that before we sign off on agreements, the needs of the working class and middle class of this country are protected.
Would you shut down the government?
It's not just their burden is on them. They control the White House, the Senate,
that hurts
and
people
the House.
too, Senator.
The government is shut. If the government is going to be shut down, which I certainly do not want to see, it's on their shoulders.
Okay.
But this is what I will tell you: I will not support a huge increase in military spending and not pay attention to the Social Security Administration, which is grossly underfunded and unable to perform what it has to do for the elderly or for the disabled.
This is the #1 trusted brand.
Ready? Get brave.
The Rack and Roll Billiards Bar in Anniston, Alabama is in the heart of Trump country. And Bob Hollingsworth is a loyal Republican who voted for Donald Trump.
I want to ask you, overall, what do you think of the job Donald Trump is doing so far?
I would give him overall a 7 out of 10.
He doesn't get a higher grade, says Hollingsworth, because of some of his personal behavior, including what he just said.
Oh, he used shithole countries.
So what do you think of the president using that term?
We could have done better there, but I think he's talking more so in terms of voicing that against the leadership of the country more so than the people of the country.
Right, but the fact that he used that word at all to describe the country in any way, shape, or form.
Not presidential, no. Not presidential. Shouldn't have done it.
We found that to be a common sentiment in downtown Anniston among people who generally admire the president. Rodney Purser works in a restaurant. With the president using that word, how do you feel about that?
He should have been more professional about it. He shouldn't have used that word.
And as far as the restaurant customers go,
I think that was unprofessional, and I would think that shows a little bit of lack of morals.
Unpresidential.
Gene Robinson feels a bit differently, though. The store owner is a former mayor of Anniston and isn't even a registered Republican, but strongly defends the president.
I don't think that he would have intentionally insulted any country, and that just came out of his mouth, and that's the way he operates.
He operates from the hip.
So you think it's just a mistake that he said that?
Yes, I do.
You don't think?
I don't think he's being derogatory.
This morning.